My dad flew me home for the holidays. 11 hours in the air, 2 layovers, no sleep. I stepped onto his porch with aching legs, a suitcase in one hand, and gifts for my brother's kids in the other. I smelled like airplane coffee and recycled air, but I still smiled because some small, stupid part of me believed this time might be different. The door opened. No hello, no hug. My dad didn't even look at my face. He looked straight at my suitcase and said, like it was already decided, "You'll babysit your brother's kids. We're going on a family vacation." My brother Mark laughed behind him. "Don't wipe your snot on her, kids. Aunt Emily's exhausted." They all laughed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just smiled and said one thing. And that's when my dad went pale and kept whispering, "No, no, no way." I didn't say anything after that, not yet. I rolled my suitcase inside like I'd agreed to everything, like the words hadn't landed in my chest like a quiet insult. The kids ran past me, shoes still on, arguing about which cartoon to watch. My dad was already walking back toward the kitchen, calling over his shoulder. "We'll talk schedules later." Schedules. Like I was an employee who had just clocked in. I told myself not to overreact. That was always my reflex, smooth things over, find the reasonable explanation, remind myself that families are messy. My dad had paid for the flight, after all. He'd said he missed me. He'd said the holidays wouldn't be the same without me. I followed them into the kitchen and set my bag down by the counter. On the fridge was a printed calendar with color-coded blocks, red for flights, blue for resort activities, yellow for what had to be my babysitting hours. Every day, from morning until late evening, my name was already written in. No one had asked me. My brother Mark leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. "It's just for a week," he said casually, like he was talking about borrowing a charger. "You work remotely anyway, right? You'll be fine." I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it again. This wasn't new. Not really. Growing up, I'd always been the easy one. The one who didn't need much. The one who figured things out. When Mark got into trouble, my dad would sigh and say, "You know how your brother is." When money was tight, I was the one who skipped things without being asked. And when I moved away for work, the dynamic didn't disappear, it just went digital. Just this once. My dad had texted when the water heater broke. Just this once, when Mark needed help covering a credit card payment. Just this once, when the electric bill was overdue because someone had miscalculated, I had sent the money. Every time. Not because I was rich, not because it didn't hurt, but because saying no felt heavier than opening my banking app. Because I didn't want to be the daughter who made things harder. Standing there in that kitchen, listening to them talk about beach dinners and poolside drinks, I felt that familiar pressure settle in. The unspoken assumption that I would adjust, that I would absorb the inconvenience, that I would make it work. My dad finally looked at me. "You're okay with this, right?" he asked, already reaching for his coffee mug. It wasn't really a question. I nodded slowly, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "We'll talk," I said, "after I rest." He nodded, satisfied, and turned away. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank, another routine alert. Nothing urgent, still, something about it made my stomach tighten. I told myself it was just jet lag, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't about babysitting. It never was. The next morning I woke up before anyone else. My body was still on another time zone, my mind buzzing in that restless, half-awake way that makes it impossible to ignore small details. I padded into the kitchen barefoot and poured myself a cup of coffee, careful not to wake the kids sprawled on the couch. My phone was on the counter, lighting up with notifications I'd missed overnight. Most of them were harmless. Work emails, a message from a friend back in Seattle, then I saw one from my bank. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a decline. Just a standard subject line about account updates. I almost swiped it away without opening it. Almost. The email listed several documents attached. One of them had my last name in the title. Another had my father's. I sat down at the table, the chair scraping softly against the tile, and opened the file. At first the words didn't register. Interest rates, loan terms, payment schedules. It looked like every other financial document I'd ever skimmed and forgotten. Then my eyes caught on a line that made my breath hitch. Borrowers. Robert Harris. Emily Harris. I stared at the screen, convinced there had to be some mistake. A typo. An old document pulled up by accident. I scrolled back to the top, then down again, slower this time. My name didn't disappear. A memory surfaced. My dad, years ago, standing at this same table, sliding a stack of papers toward me with a tired smile. He'd said it was just paperwork, that the bank needed extra reassurance, that it wouldn't affect me in any real way. I'd trusted him. The kitchen door creaked open, and my dad walked in, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He glanced at my face, then at my phone. "You're up early," he said. "Why is my name on a loan for this house?" I asked. He didn't even sit down. He waved his hand like I'd asked about the weather. "Oh, it's nothing. Just something the bank needed at the time. It says I'm a co-borrower," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. He frowned slightly, like I was being dramatic. "You're reading too much into it. You're not paying for the house. It doesn't affect you." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as he walked away, I noticed something else on the screen. A section showing recent payment activity. Small gaps, late fees quietly covered, transfers that looked familiar. My stomach dropped. That afternoon, while the kids napped and my dad ran errands, I opened my laptop in the bedroom and logged into my accounts. I didn't mean to dig. I just wanted to reassure myself. Instead, I found a pattern. The dates lined up too neatly. Every time there had been a family emergency, a payment from my account appeared within days. The amounts varied, but the timing didn't. I started saving the files. Screenshots, statements, emails I'd brushed off before. For the first time, I wondered if the reason my dad had flown me home wasn't because he missed me. It was because something was coming due, and I was already written into the solution. By that evening, I realized something had already been decided without me. The house wasn't chaotic or tense. It was organized, efficient, like a plan that had been finalized long before I stepped off that plane. I sat at the dining table with a glass of water I hadn't touched, watching my dad and my brother Mark move around the kitchen with an energy I hadn't seen in years. They weren't tired. They weren't stressed. They were excited. The kind of excited people get when they're about to escape responsibility. Mark leaned against the counter, flipping through photos on his phone. "This one's the ocean view," he said, turning the screen toward my dad. "And the kids' club is included. We won't even have to think about them." My dad chuckled. "Good, that's the whole point." I waited. I waited for one of them to glance my way, to acknowledge that I was sitting right there, that I was the reason they didn't have to think about the kids, that the entire plan hinged on my presence. Nothing. The kids were on the floor nearby, arguing over a tablet. Juice cups spilled, snacks crushed into the carpet. No one told them to stop. No one cleaned it up. That was already being mentally assigned to me too. My dad finally turned toward the table and slid a printed packet across the surface. It stopped directly in front of me, like a formal notice. "There," he said. "Everything's laid out." I picked it up slowly. At the top was a glossy photo of a beachfront resort, white sand, turquoise water, palm trees leaning just enough to look effortless. Below that were the dates. 7 days, 6 nights, departure times highlighted in yellow. Their names were printed neatly. Robert, Mark, the kids. Mine wasn't listed anywhere. I flipped the page. Room details, activity schedule, spa reservations, a dinner cruise. Every hour accounted for. And then I saw it. At the bottom of the last page, in small gray text, were the last 4 digits of the credit card used for the booking. They were mine. For a moment the room felt like it tilted slightly to the left. Not enough to knock me over, just enough to make me grab the edge of the table. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my fingers suddenly cold. I opened my banking app. Pending charges stared back at me like they'd been waiting. Resort deposit, airline tickets, car rental, all charged within the last 48 hours, all on my card. "I didn't agree to this," I said. My voice wasn't loud. I didn't need it to be. Mark barely looked up. "Come on, Em, don't start." "I'm serious," I said. "This was charged to me." My dad sighed deeply, the way he always did when he wanted to make it clear I was being unreasonable. "We'll sort it out later," he said, You always get so hung up on details. These aren't details, I said. This is thousands of dollars. He waved a hand. You make good money, and it's not like you're paying for a hotel this week. You're staying here. Something sharp twisted in my chest. So that's the trade? I asked. A bed in my childhood room in exchange for childcare and a vacation I'm funding. Mark laughed, finally looking at me. Wow, dramatic much? Then he added casually, you would have said yes anyway. You always do. That wasn't said to hurt me. It was said because he believed it. My dad nodded, like that settled it. You're here, he said. You don't have kids. You don't have a family of your own yet. This is how you contribute. The words landed heavier than any insult. I looked down at the packet again. In the margins, someone, probably my dad, had scribbled notes. Emily, mornings. Emily, evenings. Emily, bedtime. Not guest. Not daughter. Childcare. I felt heat rising behind my eyes, but I forced it back. Crying would only confirm what they already thought, that I was emotional, difficult, overreacting. I folded the packet carefully and placed it back on the table. Before you leave, I said, standing up. We need to talk, all of us. My dad frowned. About what? About money. The room shifted. Mark groaned loudly. Seriously? Right now? Yes, I said. Right now. My dad studied my face, really looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived. Something in my expression must have unsettled him, because his tone softened just a little. After dinner, he said. We don't need to ruin the night. I nodded. Fine. After dinner. I turned and walked toward my old bedroom, my legs steady, even though my hands were shaking. They thought this conversation was about babysitting. They thought it was about timing, or gratitude, or me being difficult before a trip. They had no idea that what I was about to show them had been building for years, and that once I said it out loud, there would be no going back to the version of me who quietly made their lives easier at her own expense. Dinner was still an hour away. And for the first time since I booked that flight home, I wasn't counting down the minutes until I could rest. I was counting down the minutes until everything changed. Dinner tasted like nothing. I barely touched my plate. Neither did anyone else, really. My dad kept checking his watch. Mark scrolled through his phone. The kids argued over who got the last roll. Everything felt staged, like we were all just killing time until the real event started. When the plates were cleared, I stood up. Can we sit down? I asked. All of us. My dad hesitated, then nodded toward the dining table. Fine. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was how long he thought this would take. I brought my laptop from the bedroom and set it down in front of me. The screen lit up the room with a soft glow. Mark raised an eyebrow. What is this? He asked. Information, I said. The kind we should have talked about a long time ago. My dad crossed his arms. Emily, if this is about money, we really don't need. It is about money, I said calmly. And we do need to. I clicked the trackpad. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Rows and rows of dates, amounts, notes, color-coded and painfully organized. I'd worked on it the night before, sitting on my childhood bed while the house slept, pulling statements from 3 different accounts. I turned the laptop slightly so they could all see. No, Mark said immediately. I'm not doing this. This won't take long, I replied. If you listen. My dad sighed loudly, like I was embarrassing him. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. I didn't argue. I just started scrolling. 3 years ago, I said, pointing to the first entry. You called me because the mortgage payment was late. I sent $1,400. My dad opened his mouth, closed it. 2 months later, I continued. Mark's credit card was maxed out. I transferred $2,300 so his account wouldn't be frozen. Mark shifted in his chair. That was temporary. I know, I said. That's why I wrote it down. I scrolled again. When the water heater broke, $900. When the electric bill was overdue, $380. When the car insurance lapsed, $620. The room got quieter with every number. These don't even include the subscriptions, I added. Streaming services, phone plans, grocery deliveries, anything that was easier to put on my card. My dad shook his head slowly. This isn't fair, he muttered. You're twisting things. I'm not twisting anything, I said. I'm showing you. Mark leaned forward, squinting at the screen. His face changed as he recognized his own words in the notes column. I'll pay you back next month. Just need a little help right now. Thanks, Em. You're a lifesaver. Why would you keep track of this? He asked, his voice sharp. What kind of person does that to their own family? The kind who's tired of pretending it's not happening, I replied. I scrolled to the bottom. The final row was bolded. Total, 36 months. $57,840. The number sat there, heavy and undeniable. No one spoke. My dad stared at the wall behind me like the answer might be written there instead. Mark ran a hand through his hair, suddenly unable to meet my eyes. The kids, sensing the shift, went quiet. That can't be right, my dad said finally. There's no way. It is, I said. I double-checked. Double-checked. You're acting like we stole from you, he snapped. No, I said evenly. I'm acting like I was used and like I finally stopped pretending it didn't matter. Mark stood up. This is insane. You're really doing this right before a trip? Yes, I said, because that trip is part of this. My dad's face hardened. We are your family, he said. You don't throw numbers at family like weapons. I met his eyes. Family doesn't put their daughter's name on a mortgage without explaining the risk, I said. Family doesn't charge thousands of dollars to her card without asking. And family doesn't decide her time, her money, and her silence are just available. His jaw clenched. You make good money, he said. You live alone. You don't understand how hard it is to raise kids. I felt something snap, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I understand exactly how hard it is, I said. I've been paying for it. Silence dropped over the table like a heavy blanket. I closed the laptop halfway, not to hide the screen, but to make sure they were looking at me instead. This, I said quietly, isn't a fight. It's a line. My dad swallowed. His voice came out thin. What line? I didn't answer him yet, because the next thing I was about to do wasn't something you explained first. It was something you showed. And once I did, there would be no pretending this was just a misunderstanding ever again. I didn't raise my voice. That was the part they didn't expect. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable. My dad shifted in his chair. Mark rubbed his hands together, like he was trying to warm them. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. Emily, he said carefully, we can talk about all of this after the trip. Right now, everyone's tired. Emotions are high. After the trip, that phrase again. Like the trip was inevitable. Like it still belonged to them. I opened my laptop again. The soft click of the screen lifting sounded louder than it should have. Everyone's eyes followed my hands. What are you doing? Mark asked. Finishing the conversation, I said. I turned the laptop so they could see the screen clearly. Not the spreadsheet this time. A different page. A confirmation window, white background, neat black text. The resort's logo sat at the top. Under it were their names, the dates, the package details, and right below that, one word stood out. Status. Cancelled. My dad leaned forward so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. What is that? He demanded. I didn't answer immediately. I clicked once more. A second page loaded. The airline. Refund processed. Flight credits issued. Mark stood up. No. No. You didn't. I did, I said. My dad's face drained of color. You had no right, he said, his voice shaking now. Those are our tickets. They were purchased with my card, I replied calmly. From my account, with my money. So age. The words landed hard. You can't just do this, he said. We already told the kids. I glanced toward the living room. They were watching a cartoon, blissfully unaware, laughing at something on the screen. They'll survive, I said quietly. What I wasn't surviving was this. Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. This is insane, he muttered. You're ruining everything over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, I said. It's a pattern. My dad slammed his palm on the table, not hard enough to hurt anyone, but hard enough to make the dishes rattle. So what? He snapped. You fly home just to humiliate us? I flew home because you asked me to, I said. I stayed because I needed to see this clearly. He stared at me like I was someone else entirely. We're your family, he said again, louder this time. You don't cancel a family vacation behind our backs. I met his gaze, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I didn't cancel a family vacation, I said. I canceled a bill that was never mine to pay. Mark stopped pacing. What are we supposed to do now? He asked, panic creeping into his voice. You know we can't afford that trip on our own. I nodded. I know, that was the point. My dad sank back into his chair slowly, like his legs had given out. He kept shaking his head, over and over. No, he whispered. No, no, no way. The exact words he'd muttered at the door when I arrived. Back then, they'd been about losing control of the situation. Now, they were about losing the safety net. I closed the laptop and folded my hands on the table. I'm not babysitting, I said. I'm not funding vacations. And I'm not pretending this is normal anymore. My dad looked up sharply. So what, you're just cutting us off? I'm stopping. I corrected him. There's a difference. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were listening. Mark's voice cracked. You're really going to leave us like this? I took a breath. I'm not leaving you, I said. I'm leaving the role you gave me without asking. No one spoke after that, because for the first time, they understood something they'd never had to face before. There was no trip coming to distract them, no babysitter waiting in the next room, no card they could quietly put charges on and apologize for later. The vacation was gone, and with it, the illusion that I would always be there to make their lives easier no matter what it cost me. No one moved for a long moment. The house felt frozen, like even the walls were waiting to see what would happen next. My dad was still sitting at the table, staring at the spot where the laptop had been, like the word "canceled" might reappear if he looked hard enough. I stood up and went back to my room. Not to pack, not to hide, to get something else. When I came back, I was holding a thin folder. Nothing dramatic, no bold labels, just neatly stacked pages, clipped together. I placed it on the table between us. What now? My dad asked, his voice rough. More numbers? Explanations, I said. The kind we should have had years ago. I opened the folder and slid the first page toward him. It was an email from the bank. Our names at the top. Robert Harris. Emily Harris. Co-borrowers. My dad's eyes flicked over the page, then away. That was just paperwork, he said quickly. The bank told us it wouldn't matter. It mattered to me, I said. Every missed payment, every late fee, every time you told me you'd handle it. Mark frowned. Wait, he said. What does co-borrower actually mean? I looked at him. It means if this house goes down, my credit goes down with it. My dad scoffed. That's not true. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I talked to a financial advisor, I said, before I got on the plane. That got his attention. I tapped the screen, and a familiar face appeared on a video call, calm, professional, framed by a neutral office background. Hi, Emily, she said. Is now still a good time? Yes, I replied. Thank you for joining. My dad pushed his chair back slightly. You brought an outsider into this? She's not an outsider, I said. She's someone who understands the rules. The advisor spoke carefully, her tone measured. She explained what co-borrower meant in plain language. That my credit was tied to the loan, that repeated shortfalls and late payments affected me directly, that I had the right to ask to be removed from the loan. And if they can't qualify on their own? Mark asked quietly. The advisor didn't hesitate. Then the lender may require refinancing, or, in some cases, the property may need to be sold. My mom's absence suddenly felt loud. She hadn't said a word since dinner, just stood near the doorway, hands clasped tightly together. You can't do that, my dad said, his voice rising. This is our home. I'm not taking your home, I said. I'm stopping you from risking my future without my consent. The advisor nodded. Emily has already covered multiple shortfalls. Continuing this arrangement without transparency puts her in a vulnerable position. I thanked her and ended the call. The silence afterward felt heavier than before. I slid the next document forward. This, I said, is my formal notice. My dad stared at it. Notice of what? That I'm stopping all automatic payments connected to this house, I said. Utilities, supplements, anything coming from my account. Mark's head snapped up. All of it? Yes. You can't just pull the plug, my dad said. That's not fair. I met his eyes. Neither was pretending I wasn't part of this loan. I took out my laptop one last time and opened a list of monthly auto payments. My name sat neatly beside each one. Mortgage supplement, power, internet, streaming bundles, grocery deliveries. I hovered the cursor over the first one. As of today, I said, these stop. Mark stepped forward. Emily, at least give us time, a month, something. I paused. For a second, the old instinct kicked in, the urge to soften, to negotiate, to carry just a little more weight so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. Then I remembered the door opening. No, hello, no hug. I am giving you time, I said. Time to live within what you actually earn. I clicked. A confirmation message popped up, then another. My phone buzzed in my pocket as emails started rolling in. My dad's shoulders slumped. This is cruel, he muttered. I shook my head. No. What was cruel was letting me believe this was temporary. Come in at fine, it was master. I closed the laptop and picked up my folder. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said quietly. I'm doing it because if I don't stop now, I never will. No one argued after that, because this wasn't a fight they could win with guilt or volume. This was paperwork, and paperwork doesn't care how loud you get. I didn't leave the house that night, not right away. I stayed in my childhood bedroom, staring at the same ceiling I'd stared at as a teenager, only now every crack felt like a countdown. No one knocked on my door, no one asked if I was okay. The silence was louder than any argument. The first consequences came fast. The next morning, my phone buzzed with notifications not from my dad, but from my bank. Each one was a confirmation. Payments canceled. Accounts updated. Responsibilities shifted. In the kitchen, the mood had changed completely. There were no vacation photos open on phones, no excited voices. My dad moved slower, like he was carrying something heavy he couldn't put down. Mark avoided eye contact, speaking only when he had to. The kids felt it too. They were quieter, more careful, like they'd learned overnight that something important had broken and they didn't know how to fix it. By the end of the week, reality started knocking harder. Mark picked up extra shifts. I heard him on the phone late at night, asking about overtime, delivery routes, anything that paid quickly. The jokes were gone. So was the confidence. He started talking in numbers instead of assumptions. My dad spent hours on the computer, scrolling through bank statements and emails with a tight jaw. I watched him reread the same messages, like repetition might change the meaning. You didn't have to do all of it at once, he said one afternoon, not looking at me. I did, I replied. Otherwise, it would never be all of it. He didn't answer. A few days later, I saw my mom listing things online. Designer bags I'd seen her carry to brunch. A coffee table she'd once called an investment piece. The captions were careful. Barely used. Moving sale. Must go. She didn't say a word about it. Neither did I. What she didn't sell showed up in quieter ways. Groceries became cheaper. Name brands disappeared from the pantry. The thermostat dropped a few degrees, even though it was still cold at night. The house was learning how to live without my card, quietly filling in the gaps. The hardest part wasn't the tension. It was the shift in how they looked at me. Not with affection. Not with gratitude. With calculation. Like they were trying to figure out whether I'd cave. I didn't. I left 2 days later with my suitcase just as full as when I'd arrived, but feeling strangely lighter. There were no dramatic goodbyes. My dad hugged me stiffly. Mark muttered, "Text me when you get home." On the drive away, my phone stayed silent. For a while, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have left one payment running, one small cushion to soften the landing. Then, a week after I got back, my friend Sarah sent me a message. "Have you seen this?" Attached was a screenshot. It was my dad's Facebook post. He hadn't used my name. He didn't have to. He wrote about children who forget where they come from, about sacrifices that go unrecognized, about being left with nothing right before the holidays. The comments were full of sympathy. Kids these days. Family means helping no matter what. So sad. My stomach twisted. For a moment, the old urge surged back to explain, to defend myself, to lay out every receipt like evidence in a courtroom. I didn't. I muted the post. I saved the screenshot. I forwarded it to my financial advisor and asked one simple question. Is there anything else I need to do to protect myself? Her reply came quickly. Keep documenting. You're doing the right thing. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through the confirmations and canceled subscriptions one last time. The safety net they'd been relying on for years was gone. And for the first time, it wasn't catching anyone but me. A few weeks passed before my mom showed up at my door. She didn't call first. She didn't announce herself. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, holding a reusable grocery bag like a shield, my first instinct was to close it again. Instead, I stepped aside. She looked different in my apartment, smaller somehow. No perfectly styled hair, no confident smile, just tired eyes and a careful glance around the space I'd built on my own. I didn't know, she said quietly, looking at my couch, my small table, the view from the window. I always imagined you living somewhere bigger. I nodded. This is what I can afford when I'm not paying for 2 households. The words stung both of us. She sat down and opened the bag, pulling out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not enough to erase the past, not even close, but it wasn't about the amount. It's a start, she said quickly. I've been selling things, picking up extra hours. I told your father we can't keep pretending anymore. I didn't rush to take it. For years, money had only ever flowed one way. Seeing it pointed back toward me even a little felt surreal. I'm not asking you to fix everything, I said gently. I'm asking you to stop expecting me to. She nodded, tears gathering but not spilling. Your dad still says you betrayed us, she admitted. But I don't believe that anymore. That was enough. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet, holding the envelope without opening it. For the first time, my phone wasn't buzzing with requests or guilt or emergencies that somehow only I could solve. That holiday season, I didn't fly home. I stayed where I was. I made myself dinner. I watched the city lights from my window and felt something settle in my chest that I'd never felt before. Peace. Here's what I learned. Saying no doesn't make you heartless, it makes you honest. The people who truly love you will adjust to your boundaries. The ones who only loved what you provided will call you selfish the moment you stop. It hurts. It's lonely. But sometimes, choosing yourself is the first real act of love you've ever been allowed to make. And once you do, you realize something important. You were never abandoning your family. You were finally rescuing yourself.